Hello. It's the end, or near enough the end, of day 5 of my collaboration on a 7-day roguelike for the 7DRL Challenge of 2015. So, how are things going as of this time of day on day 5? It's about 10:30 p.m. GMT, so I've got maybe an hour, 2 hours if I manage to stay alert long enough to keep plugging away at the game. So how are things going today? Well, I feel more positive for a start. Yesterday, as I mentioned, was a bit of a tough slog for me because a lot of my crucial jobs which were specific to me, which is a lot of the writing and setting development stuff, had already been done. And until various tech things were in place, I couldn't myself add content to the game directly. Things like monsters and items and abilities and that kind of stuff. So my options were very limited as to the things I could work on yesterday, which is why I was stuck with the things that were extremely difficult for me to do. But we've both been working hard this evening, and things are now in place that allow me to add content to the game. So I've been stacking up a load of monsters today, putting those in. They're not in place to actually sort of be enacted yet. They won't spawn or do anything, but I've been creating what they are, essentially. Next is going to be how they act, how they attack and how we attack them. That's probably going to be tomorrow. After all, we only have 2 days left. But I feel a lot more productive today. I've created what feels like reams of monsters and weapons and armour. So that's nice. I actually feel like I've got things done today. And it's a surprisingly straightforward thing to do, the way my partner, my 7DRL partner, has set it up. One day, I'm going to learn to say his name aloud. I don't want to mangle the pronunciation. Hence the cryptic "my partner." But I've posted his name in various places. Or you can look up Rogue Station, his game from last year, and his name will be on that. It's also worth playing in its own right. So, yes, the way he set things up to enable me to add content has worked in a pretty straightforward way, so that's been a very positive development. So we've been busy, we've been productive, and things are coming together. It's still going to be tight, but we're getting there. One thing though, this is not going to be the game we intended it to be. It's become increasingly evident. In fact, it became evident pretty rapidly early on in the challenge that we weren't going to be able to do what we intended to do. We had, as I may have mentioned before, I forget, we had sort of an emergency fallback position, which we were referring to as MVP, which I think is a technical term, meaning minimum viable product, if memory serves. Basically, our emergency fallback position of the least we can do, that, you know, the least we can put into the game and still have it be the core of what we wanted it to be. And we've ended up striving just to achieve that minimum position within this week. But it's become apparent quite quickly and quite readily over the last few days that firstly, we were far too ambitious, which is very easy to do. It's something I have criticised 7DRLs for in the past when I've been reviewing them. And it's such an easy trap to fall into. And I never really understood it before, because I thought you must be able to see that you're taking on too much. Surely, that must be obvious. And it kind of is. You do get a sneaking feeling that you're probably overreaching. But what I didn't appreciate was how it happens. The way this overreaching and taking on too much occurs on the game creation side of things is you decide to put something in, you come up with an idea, a concept, a mechanic, whatever it is. And when you're working out how that's going to happen and how you're going to implement it in the game, you start going, oh, you know what would work really well with that as kind of a synergy? If we did this as well, and then they sort of become packaged together so that the original idea on its own seems diminished if you remove the second idea from it, because they become a united idea. But of course that ends up multiplying the workload and multiplying the size of the project, and this keeps happening. You keep going, oh, and this thing, but we have to put that in because that is too good an idea to not put in. But you have to not put them in. Don't put good ideas in. There's a tip for future 7DRL participants. If you have good ideas, don't put them in, because you won't get a chance to do them. So that's been quite a learning experience, that we have basically had to resort to what we considered to be the minimum that we could get away with and still have the game be, at its core, kind of what we intended. So we were far too ambitious at the outset, and we didn't prepare enough. He warned me. He did say when he first approached me months ago, we need to get a lot of our design ideas, concepts and things sorted out before the start of the week, because we don't want to be thrashing out things like, are we going to have a high HP system or a 1 HP system or somewhere in between? We don't want to thrash all of that stuff out during the week. We need to have some design stuff done first, because we could easily spend the week just discussing what we intended to do with it. So some stuff had to be laid down first. And we did do that. We did do some design document stuff. And I thought we'd done enough, but we hadn't. We hadn't. There's still so much that we've been trying to work out as we've gone along, which really we could have done with having nailed down by the end of day one at the latest. So it's been a learning experience. And the game is not going to be what we hoped it would be. That's inescapable at this point. But we are sort of settling for at least representing what we intended it to be. It's ended up being almost like a trailer for the idea we had in mind. What we intended was much bigger, much grander, and it seemed doable within a week at one point, but it wasn't, realistically. Maybe if we had both had the entire week, no jobs putting demands on our time, no families and no, other commitments, social activities and things, which we've both had, which everyone has, drawing upon their time. If we'd both had 7 complete days uninterrupted with no other demands on our time, maybe we could have done what we originally wanted to do. But it's just not feasible for adults who have other commitments going on to be able to do that stuff. That much of it, anyway, in 1 week. But we are going to get it done. It's not going to be what we hoped it would be, but the essence of what we intended is going to be there. And hopefully you will see what we were going for, and there will be enough of it there, hopefully, to make people go, well, that could be interesting. That's not a bad idea. I see what they were trying to do there. Which, for me, as someone who has played and reviewed 7DRLs before but never made one, tends to be the stuff I look out for in 7DRLs. With a week-long project, I don't expect it to be a polished, comprehensive, fully rounded game. There are a few that are. Tom Ford, aka Flend, tends to do really well with those. If you look at something like Princess RL or Trauma RL, to name just a couple of his previous 7DRL entries, they tend to be very well-rounded, very well-realised, complete games, but he's an anomaly. As Darren Gray remarked in the recent episode of Roguelike Radio, the podcast, which I appeared on for that episode, plug. As Darren remarked in that episode, Tom Ford is an entity all to himself. He doesn't seem to be bound by the laws of the universe that bind other 7DRL participants. Somehow he pulls things out of the bag which no one else could manage. Anyway, hopefully we are going to be able to present something which at least has one or two kernels of interesting stuff in it to provoke that kind of, interesting reaction, which is what I always look for when I'm playing 7DRLs. So, that's where we stand at the moment. We're going to get a playable game finished. We have 2 days remaining. And I feel like, not that it's going to fall to me, I'm just choosing my words carefully here. I feel like there's going to be a lot of routine grunt work, which might be on my plate for the couple of days ahead, because it's the weekend. My 7DRL partner is a family man, so he has family responsibilities at the weekend. I am not, and I do not. So there are things, a lot of the routine things, like just creating sort of the listings, I don't know what the technical term is, but sort of the listings for monsters and items and stuff, which I've been doing part of today. That kind of stuff which doesn't require a lot of technical know-how, at least not the way he's set it up, but does require time to just trudge through it. I feel like that is going to be a lot of what I'm doing. Certainly tomorrow. And then we'll try and get some playtesting and bug fixing and polishing done before the end of Sunday, which will be our day 7. And then we will declare a success, I hope. So anyway, I feel pretty good about this. It's been a rough week. It's been tiring, for sure, for both of us. But it's been interesting and informative, and although there have been times of tension and times of almost despondency, overall it's been an exhilarating experience. And then we'll see what happens next. As I mentioned yesterday, I think, maybe we will leave the project as a completed 7DRL and just leave it as it is. Or maybe, when we've had a couple of weeks away from it, because frankly, after this week, I don't want to look at this thing again for at least a few days. Maybe we will want to come back to it and do some more work on it. We'll see. We'll see. But that's all in the future. For now, 7DRL. Keep your eyes on this space. I'll do another vlog entry tomorrow and Sunday. And Sunday might be a very quick one, because that's going to be the frantic rush to get everything done in time so we can declare a success. But I will keep you updated. Watch this space. And watch 7drl.org to see the outcomes of the challenge. Watch out for Void Sanctum appearing as a completed game at last. I say at last. It feels like a lot longer than a week in some respects. So anyway, thanks for watching the vlogs and following the progress of this project, and my first attempt at collaboratively making a video game, and a roguelike, no less. Now, before I sign off completely, I am actually going to give you a quick tour around the newest version of the game. Some of it is very similar. As I said, monsters and things haven't been put in yet, so there's not going to be any combat or any of that kind of stuff. But there are a couple of extra features which I'd like to show off while I'm here. So come back in a second, don't go anywhere. Here, then, is the newest version of Void Sanctum's work in progress, as of the end-ish of day 5. You'll notice that a little bit of it looks similar. The text is basically the same, if not entirely the same. This little house area, which we saw before, is the same, although we were outside it previously. But now we have sound! A couple of people have asked about sound, and we did indeed intend to have sound. And we've got some items! So, I don't know what this is, actually. Right, it's the helmet. There are going to be tooltips. As you can see, the tooltip is pretty small at the moment, but this is all work in progress, as I said. And the stats aren't set, you know, this is just basically incoherent numbers at the moment, because we haven't worked out all the character stats yet. But there we go, we have an inventory, and we're using, as you can see, a kind of... what's the word for it? Kind of a straw doll thing. but with an @ symbol, because it's a roguelike. So we're not using the crappy inventory system used by many roguelikes, although you do pop that open with I. So there's that. And these items are not exactly specifically placed. They've actually been set up to spawn within a set radius, I believe, and to draw upon a pool. Yeah, see that? That's another item. The last time I tested this out, that item was over here, I think. Somewhere over here. So they've been set up to spawn within a set radius and to spawn items from a specific pool of possible items. So I don't know exactly what they're going to be. Okay, so I'll put that there. These are sort of armour, trinket and hand slots, but again the inventory is unrefined at the moment, so there's going to be work done on that over the next couple of days. So that's a helmet, and this is steel sword, an ordinary steel sword. So yes, we do have the basics of an inventory system in place. And as we proceed, you'll notice the sound actually changes as we move from zone to zone. So we had this much more dramatic, stormy sounding thing on the peninsula, which is surrounded by the dark, turbulent waters of the Great Central Ocean. And you can hear the wind whipping around. And then as we move into the former Imperial Heartland, we have a much mellower, softer sort of soundtrack. And then if we head northward up to the region of Dorness, which is quite a scenic region, you'll notice that it becomes an even more mellow, restful sort of soundtrack. Almost Oblivion-esque, I'd say. And if we head westward into the forest, Westaway Forestland, again, different soundtrack. And then I love this one. This is my personal favourite. When we head out into the ghoul-haunted hills that are out west beyond the forest. Listen to that. Again, the landscape won't be like this in the finished version. It will be different depending on the zone. But listen to that creepy soundtrack. The reason it's called In Sombre Farmlands, and I'll read you this bit of text here. Yellow fields of vigorous crops vie with bitter crags and ominous overhangs for dominance of the foothills. A gentle but chilling breeze drifts listlessly down from the slopes to the west, chafing bare skin. Occasionally a mournful whistle from high on the peaks echoes eerily around the crags. Otherwise, uneasy silence lies like a mouldering blanket. To the west, one mountain towers over the surrounding peaks like a granite emperor. On its ice-caked slopes, a gaping cave like a wound shimmers with heat. To the east, you overlook the grand green sweep of Westaway Forestland and the vast broken arch. And this is sort of a combination of rocky foothills and fertile valleys of farmland. At least that's the way I envisaged it. And I just wrote it with this slightly haunted, slightly melancholy tone. For no real reason, that was just the way it came out. I say for no reason, that's the way the creative process works, it just kind of happens. And it put me in mind, when I came back to it afterwards, of the scene in Interview with the Vampire, the book, not the film, where Louis and Claudia go roaming Eastern Europe searching for other vampires, and all they find is ruined castles and little isolated communities living in superstitious fear of the ghoulish creatures that stalk the ruins nearby. That's what it reminded me of, so that's the kind of feel we've gone for with the sound in that area. Anyway, I hope you've got some enjoyment or vague satisfaction of curiosity out of this little potter around our sort of refreshed version of the work in progress of Void Sanctum for this year's 7DRL challenge. Thanks for sticking with us, and come back again for the next instalment of my vlog tomorrow sometime. So until then, bye for now.